A Lamar Jackson hater has historically changed their tune. But is it all a setup? We talk about that and so much more coming up on Locked On Ravens.
You are Locked On Ravens, your daily Baltimore Ravens podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
You are Locked On Ravens. Welcome into the show. I'm your host, Kevin Oestreicher of Ravens Wire, here with you on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thanks so much for being here today on Locked On Ravens, making Locked On Ravens a part of your day and your first listen each and every single day. And thank you to all the everydayers, the first-time listeners. If you're somewhere in the middle, thank you as well for tuning in. We are 5 days a week plus more here with daily Ravens content every single weekday, as well as sometimes on the weekends with bonus episodes. We got live watch-alongs, instant reactions, the whole 9 yards on Locked On Ravens. We have a jam-packed episode today. Lamar Jackson hater has historically changed his tune. It was a historic day yesterday, and we're going to talk about that, as well as if it's all just a setup for what could be coming up in a couple of weeks. Then in the second part of the show, the Lions pulled a fast one on the Ravens, but in my opinion, I don't think it's going to work out for them. Then in the final part of the show, we'll dive into some injury analysis for the Baltimore Ravens. Want to remind everyone, today's episode of Locked On Ravens is brought to you by Mazda. Like our players, we sweat every detail because when you make every move count, pulling off the unexpected is only the beginning. Stay tuned later for highlights in this week's Moving the Game Forward. Mazda, move and be moved. With us today, it is former Baltimore Ravens wide receiver, Super Bowl champion Qadry Ismail of Missile Training and MissileTraining.com, as well as from the Locked On Ravens Squad Show. And Q, big win for the Ravens on Sunday. We obviously broke it down on the post-game Locked On Ravens Squad Show with you, myself, and Sam and Joku. And now the Ravens head into a big Monday night battle with the Detroit Lions. And hey, as Kyle Van Noy said, 1-1 feels a lot better than 0-2.
1-1 is absolutely better than 0-2. And I like the fact that there are some 0-2 teams that we're going to be facing on our schedule, a la the Kansas City Chiefs. And so I think for the Ravens, they were able to stay the course against a very good Cleveland Browns defensive front and the scheme in which they implemented. But then at the same time, a defense that, unfortunately gave up 41 points against a Buffalo Bills team that is firing on all cylinders against a superior quarterback in Josh Allen. But I think that they somewhat righted the ship, if you will, by going up against Joe Flacco and the Cleveland Browns offense. Jerry Jeudy, you're not that good, bro. Don't talk again.
You know, it's crazy because I was getting ready for multiple receipt pulls from that Browns game, Jerry Jeudy being one, and obviously Grant Delpit Q being the other. But hey, you mentioned that defensive front, the way that they stopped Derrick Henry, they had their teammates back. They lived up to the words that Grant Delpit spoke, and Derrick Henry was limited to just over 2 yards of carry in the game, but the offense still, despite not playing their best, the team as a whole put up 41 points, and I think you got to feel pretty good about that as a whole. And we'll talk about some of the game from Sunday a little bit later, as well as their upcoming opponent in the Detroit Lions. But Q, you mentioned those Kansas City Chiefs. We know after this Monday night game, Baltimore will be traveling to Arrowhead to face off against Patrick Mahomes and Kansas City. And Lamar Jackson has a hater of his historically changing his tune. It was a historic day in the, I guess, NFL media world, as if you know who Nick Wright is, and, you know, we've talked about him plenty on this show for some of the things he has said about Lamar Jackson, and not in a positive light. Nick Wright has, been someone that has not necessarily been a fan of Lamar Jackson, particularly in the postseason. He's made that very clear. And he has a segment on his show, First Things First, where they do Mahomes Mountain, where essentially Nick Wright, big Chiefs guy, he has Mahomes at the top of the mountain, then everybody else kind of filters in below Mahomes, right? It's called Mahomes Mountain after all. On Tuesday, Nick Wright, he put Lamar Jackson on the top of Mahomes Mountain. Almost brought a tear to my eye. This is a historic day. It was a historic day. It is Mahomes Mountain after all. And when you have a different face up there than Patrick Mahomes, and him putting Lamar Jackson up there, and he did say the mountain is fair. That's what he said. He said, for the time being, Lamar Jackson is at the top of Mahomes Mountain. And Q, I put out some stats about Lamar yesterday, and I'll read them off to you here. We know now Lamar Jackson has the highest passer rating in NFL history. We know he has the most rushing yards for a quarterback. And through 2 weeks of the NFL season so far, he's number one in touchdown percentage, number one in passer rating, number one in QBR, number one in adjusted yards per attempt, tied for first in passing touchdowns. He does not have an interception, which obviously puts him tied for first in interception percentage. Lamar Jackson, an incredible start to the season, which even has some of his haters flipping the script on what they usually say.
It is so interesting to me, the narratives of Lamar Jackson and his career, but the mental toughness and resolve for him not to give a beep is awesome. I think he just continually goes out there every single year. He looks at his own game, figures out how to improve upon it, and just masterfully does it. He does it so, I'm not going to say effortlessly, because again, we all have to work on our craft, period. And even if you have talent, you work on your craft. The greatest that have ever done it, they are obsessed with trying to continually better themselves. And for Lamar, his ability to better himself through throwing the football, through running the ball, being just so judicious with it, and not putting his team in harm's way, excelling at, making the right decisions and big plays, spreading the ball around, not worrying about who gets what or whatever. Like all of it, it just spills out into the awesomeness of Lamar Jackson and his career. And I think all the haters and the Nick Wrights of the world with Mahomes Mountain, absolutely, Patrick Mahomes is deservingly, that standard you got to look at in this era of quarterbacks. Josh Allen is up there. Joe Burrow, if he can stay healthy, is up there. Lamar Jackson is up there. Patrick Mahomes, because of his resume, you got to give him his flowers. However, when you look at now and what now represents, you also have to recognize that Lamar Jackson takes a backseat to no one. And it's just a matter of time for him to string together some awesome postseason runs, plural, starting with this year, of course, that then he will be put up in the ultimate pantheon of that upper tier. But right now, got to give Patrick Mahomes his love as far as just career-wise and what he's done, like both regular season, postseason, who he's had, who he's not had, all those things, all those factors. He's won his championship. He's won his MVP, Super Bowl MVPs, all that. But when we're talking about Lamar Jackson, man, right now he's the best.
Look, you're correct. Where Mahomes has the rings, like he has the hardware. It is there. It is clear. It is evident. But yes, Lamar Jackson right now is playing like the best quarterback in football to me. There are no ifs, ands, or buts. And Q, if you want to put it into some more context, Jordan Schultz, he put out Lamar Jackson in his last 20 games. He has 4,927 passing yards, 1,033 rushing yards, 57 touchdowns, just 4 interceptions, and a 125.1 passer rating. He is on a historic tear right now, really for the better part of 2.5 seasons at this point. And I guess 2 and some change, just only 2 weeks into this season. But regardless, he has been doing things that we have never seen at this position before. And in my opinion, there will never be a player like Lamar Jackson. But Q, is this all just a setup from Nick Wright? Because I went back and I listened to what he had to say about it. And, he gave Lamar his flowers, of course. I don't want to shortchange Nick Wright on that. He acknowledged Lamar and how great he's been and said he's, a couple votes away from winning, 3 straight MVPs last season. But it's the narrative of going to Kansas City. And Nick Wright said when he was going through this, top of the mountain is Lamar. The guy ahead of you on the mountain, meaning for Mahomes, with a chance to reclaim your spot and remind everyone who you are. But for the time being, Lamar Jackson, he is atop the mountain. Is this just a week 4? Oh, wait, Mahomes is going to try to dethrone the guy on Mahomes Mountain here. And is it all just the setup? I don't know the question or the answer to that question, but there is no question in my mind, Q, that I think a lot of people are waking up to Lamar Jackson's greatness. And even people who have been very stuck in their opinions for years, there's not a lot they can really say anymore unless they want to dive into arguments that have already grown tired. It's getting really hard for people to deny the greatness that Lamar Jackson is showing on a week-to-week basis.
Yeah, see, that's the thing. Like, what are we, dense? You look around and see all the different quarterbacks that have come through. There's a development process that has to take place. Lamar Jackson, yeah, he's one of those guys too that took some time, but the time was a very small window and he adjusted and adapted. So for Nick Wright, I can see what he's saying and it's valid. It's, what have you done for me lately, league? Lamar has been consistent. I think also, though, we're going to see some games that are going to be coming up that are going to be some real testers, and starting with the Detroit Lions. And that's okay. We knew the 6-game gauntlet was going to be a challenge. The Lions are up next. It'll be at the halfway point in this gauntlet, and that's okay. Let's bring it.
Speaking of that Detroit Lions game, the Detroit Lions, they made a sneaky move, and they think it could maybe help them prepare for Lamar Jackson. But as we know, it is not easy to do that. So we should have stayed tuned. A lot coming up on Locked On Ravens. This episode is brought to you by Mazda's moving the game forward. For those who believe it's not just about playing the game, it's about redefining it. There are moments that do more than put points on the board. They move crowds, move culture, and keep moving the game forward. This week's moment that moved the game forward has to be Roquan Smith picking up the Tavius Robinson strip sack and taking it back to the house. Roquan has been the subject of some criticism for inconsistent play, but you know what? He moved forward from a tough Buffalo game in week 1. And he was honestly the player of the game for the Ravens in week number 2. 15 total tackles, and his impact went far beyond the box score. So he kept himself moving forward by believing in his talent and his ability. And that positive outlook, I think, propelled him to a really great game. And that's what I think is helping the fans move forward as well with Roquan, watching his performance on Sunday. When you follow what moves you, the unexpected is only the beginning. And just like there's more to every highlight, there's more to a Mazda vehicle. Mazda, move and be moved. And the show is brought to you by Gametime. NFL season is back, and honestly, there's nothing better than being in the stadium surrounded by fans cheering on your team. But let's be honest, getting tickets can be a hassle between queues, login screens, and prices jumping at checkout. It's frustrating. That's why I use Gametime, the app that gives the advantage back to fans. Gametime is fast, easy, and backed by the Gametime guarantee. You'll always get 100% authentic tickets delivered on time and at the best price. Plus, all fees are included, so the price you see is the price you pay. I pulled up Gametime, and in just a couple taps, I saw amazing deals. I'm talking about your favorite NFL games as low as $100. And the app made it super simple. I could even see the exact view from my seat before buying. And I love the zone deals too. You can pick a section and Gametime picks the seats and you can save big. Honestly, it's faster, cheaper, and less stressful than any other way I've bought tickets before. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, that's promo code LOCKEDON NFL for $20 off. Swipe, tap, ticket, go. Download Gametime today. Back here, Locked On Ravens, Kevin Oestreicher, Qadry Ismail, still talking Ravens football with you again, 5 days a week plus more here on Locked On Ravens. We'll be back here later tonight with the Locked On Ravens squad show, Q&I, as well as Sam and Njoku diving into the latest storylines about Baltimore Ravens football. So be sure to hit the like and subscribe button in video form, follow along in audio form as well, and tell a friend, tell a family member if they want some daily Ravens coverage, some Ravens perspective. We have them covered just like we have you covered here on Locked On Ravens. Now, Q, the Lions made a little bit of noise yesterday when it came to a particular move that a lot of Ravens fans certainly, I think, see right through. And that is the Lions signing former Ravens wide receiver / quarterback, it's listed here, Malik Cunningham, to their practice squad. Now, obviously, we've seen a lot of teams try to prepare for Lamar Jackson, get that guy on a scout team that can quote unquote emulate what Lamar Jackson can bring to the table. I'll say this right off the bat, Q, there is no soul in the world that can replicate what Lamar Jackson can do on a football field. And, you know, is this a situation where they're signing Cunningham to be that guy and maybe try to get a little bit of intel onto what the Ravens do? As a former player, actually, I'm curious. I don't think I've ever asked you this question before. When you sign somewhere or when a player signs somewhere, is there ever that conversation about like, hey, what do you know about this team? Because I'm sure it give them a competitive advantage, but I'm sure on the other side of it, it's like, does the player almost feel a little icky doing that? I mean, what is that conversation? Is there even a conversation like that when it comes to players signing with a rival or a team maybe you're playing that week?
It's so funny because the NFL is so clandestine, and the amount of, oh, I don't want to tell you any information, oh, I don't want to give you an edge and all that. And ultimately it comes down to Sunday, and do you make the proper game adjustments? Usually when it is a former coach or someone that knows something about you, it lasts maybe for the first two series, and the game kind of settles down. You got to play. The competitive advantage of knowing personnel and all that. Again, maybe it has just a small amount. But then again, if you're not making adjustments and if you're not able to process and make plays, then who cares? So with that, there are some teams that, yeah, you get all this information. Obviously, from a Ravens perspective, when we went to Tennessee, the famous Trent Dilfer had left his playbook and mysteriously it was gone. And we got in the game and they all of a sudden know some of our checks and some of our plays and all that. And so, yeah, we beat them. But sure, in the back of your mind, you're kind of like, oh, boy, what's going on? So the game is so fast. You are so good. You're trying to look at every tell that you can possibly, look at and turn over every stone and all that. Still got to catch, still got to block, still got to tackle, still got to play within the rules. But Malik Cunningham, it depends on whether or not he even was involved in the offense in general, especially now that things are on the tablets, because if you're tablet oriented rather than paper oriented, you're in a situation where from a tablet oriented standpoint, they're giving it, you're giving it back to them. Unless you're just like, oh, well, I think they're trying to release me. And I think they're going to, I think I'm going to be signed by someone. Let me start taking a multiple amount of screenshots. Hey, what are you going to do? Like what? So I think for Malik, sure, there could be one or two things that he could say personnel-wise that I know if I see, here's the interesting thing about Nate. When you line up 2 yards outside the numbers, Nate always looks in and turns his shoulders in and doesn't like to have you force an outside release. Kyle Hamilton, every time they would have him blitz, I noticed that it was Roquan kind of going over to the strong side. It's those little details that you could give a team or a teammate and they can kind of go with it. But plays, maybe some of the offensive line calls or something along those lines, maybe. But even then, you have to play, and it lasts maybe for 2.5, 3 series. You got to play the game ultimately. That's the bottom line.
I go back, Q, to when Eric Weddle signed with the Rams. There was this whole situation. I think he was doing film study. Sports Illustrated, I think he was doing it with. And he was asked in that film session about how Baltimore's corners communicate with each other and stuff. And this was, it was a film thing, was going out to the masses. And he kind of said, Eric Weddle said, quote, "I can't give all the secrets away, man. Those are my guys, though. Could never turn my back on my guys over there." And he actually made it clear that he wasn't even going to tell the Rams, like Coach McVay said, "No, I'm not going to tell those guys." He said, quote, "Coach McVay knows what he's doing. He doesn't need much. What kind of man would I be if I rat out my guys that I played 3 years with?" And so that kind of sparks it to me where I'm like, oh, I guess is maybe up to the player in terms of whether they want to even do that or not. And I don't even know how many teams actually ask for that. But I thought it's interesting because, again, you're signing a guy who obviously has played with Lamar Jackson, played in that offense, was a former quarterback at Louisville, and maybe wasn't like directly involved with what they did on offense on a weekly basis on the field, but still probably knew a decent amount. So I don't know what it's going to look like, but I think you're right, Q. You got to line up on Sundays and play the game. All that other stuff probably doesn't matter in the grand scheme of things, right? But the Ravens actually made another move, and that was re-signing Malik Ham. Malik Ham's back. He's back on the practice squad. Now you might say, well, who did they let go off of the practice squad? It wasn't necessarily their choice, but Nick Samek, the center, was signed by the Carolina Panthers to their active roster. They had a massive amount of injuries to their offensive line, particularly this past Sunday. And so they needed a guy. They decided Samek, being in his second season, was the guy that they wanted. So he is officially gone. So we were having conversations, Q, about, could it be Samek making the roster? Maybe Garrett Dellinger. Now it's nobody. Nobody's even on the practice squad there. Both those guys, 2 7th-round picks from 2 years, they've come and gone. It is what it is now. But I think the interesting part about it is, and this kind of will get into a little more injury analysis in the final part of the show, but the reports have said that Kyle Van Noy is bracing to miss a couple of weeks with his hamstring injury. Obviously, that would mean an increase in snaps for Mike Green, probably an activation for David Ajabo as well to maybe fill in a part-time spot. Our hamstring injuries, particularly tricky at the NFL level. We've seen a lot of Ravens players suffer them over the years. And especially for a player in Kyle Van Noy who is not 25 anymore. Does that recovery process take a little longer?
So here's the deal. When you have your different tears, they grade them out 1 through 3. 1 is the least, all the way up to 3, which is more surgery related. From a hamstring aspect, it is a lower into the insertion of the hamstring where it goes into the tendon, which wraps behind the knee, or is it higher up in a high hamstring pull? And is it medial, meaning on the inside or on the outer band of the lateral hamstring head? All of that matters when it comes to the rehab process and how long it would take. A guy like a Kyle Van Noy, depending upon his alternative means of rehab, he could get back a lot faster. So many guys have done a multitude of things to speed up healing process. I, for one, lived off of the element of speeding up and doing alternative processes rather than just strictly doing what the trainer wanted to do. And because of that, you would be amazed how quickly you can come back and not necessarily have to rely upon the traditional means of ice and stem, which is so antiquated, we don't need to get into it. But for Kyle Van Noy, this is a tough one for him. Age can be a factor from a healing standpoint, but if he can figure out how to help himself get some regeneration, and there's some methods that you can do to help speed up the process, then I would absolutely look at those means. Matter of fact, if I was him, I would be like, hey, Charlie Kolar, what you know about some ways in which you've increased your recovery time? Let me understand what that is all about. I would absolutely go to him and look that up. So there's a little tip.
A lot of guys on that roster, I think, would have some tips. So I'm curious to see how long Van Noy ends up missing. Hopefully not a long absence, if any absence. But again, the reports are signaling that it's probably going to be a little while there. Coming up, though, in the final part of the show, we'll talk about some more of the Ravens injury situations as well. And a lot more coming up on Locked On Ravens. First, the show is brought to you by FanDuel. The NFL season is here, and FanDuel's making sure you're ready for kickoff with a can't-miss offer. Right now, new customers can bet just $5, and if your bet wins, will get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. And I love using FanDuel because it fits however you like to bet. Player props, building the same game parlay, or even jumping in live as the action unfolds. Makes every game more exciting, whether you're watching your team or just keeping an eye on your fantasy lineup. And it's quick, easy, and the best way to add a little more energy to your Sundays. Now, this Ravens and Lions game going to be really good. It's the Monday night matchup, and I think for me, I'm liking the Ravens. Now on FanDuel, the Ravens are currently 5.5-point home favorites in this game. So maybe you like the Lions as the road underdog, but I'm picking the Ravens here at that 5.5 number. I like that. I think the roster is good enough, and all that Lions team is really, really good. Baltimore loves playing in those prime time games. So are you ready to play? Download the FanDuel app now by visiting FanDuel.com to get started. That's FanDuel.com to place your first $5 bet. Back here, Locked On Ravens, Kevin Oestreicher, Qadry Ismail, still diving into Ravens content and coverage with you as we do here on Locked On Ravens. It's obviously a Ravens podcast after all. So we talk about the Baltimore Ravens, what we're doing now. We're going to continue to dive into some of the Ravens injury situations. Now, Q, I talked with Nick Moore, the Ravens long snapper, about this yesterday, and not necessarily Patrick Ricard's injury, but the guys who have stepped up in his place. And honestly, in Isaiah Likely's place as well. Zaire has played really well, did have the rough sequence on Sunday against the Browns, but I thought in that Buffalo game was incredible. And Nick had nothing but glowing things to say about him. Obviously, you mentioned Charlie. He's a guy that stepped in for Isaiah Likely, and we saw Isaiah practice in a limited capacity on Friday. So it is possible that he could possibly be out on the field for the Ravens on Monday night. But for Ricard, John Harbaugh expressed disappointment kind of in how that's going, not about Ricard, just about the recovery in the situation, where it hasn't necessarily been as quick as the team has thought. And, those injuries can be very tricky and very difficult. It's been slower than they'd hoped. And he officially classified Ricard as week-to-week mode. So I'm not sure how long that means he will be out. I mean, obviously Ricard, he's part of what they do on offense, and they like to utilize him in a lot of different ways. I mean, is this a situation, Q, and again, without knowing the full extent of it, where that injury is something that could sideline him for the better part of a month? Does he have to take it like very slow and very cautious with an injury like this? What are kind of your thoughts on it as we continue to get information on it?
And you're saying Ricard, correct?
Yes. Yep.
Yeah. Okay. So for him, I think it's the tough part is his role is one of collisions, and when you're having that mass of colliding and then your body really gets into that deceleration and it's really difficult to brace yourself, that's where that calf, that foot, Achilles combination can get you. And I also know this is the unpopular opinion that you do heels down training, and you're going to put yourself, when you go max neural drive, to put yourself at risk with your Achilles. And you can get that soleus and the gastrocnemius kind of filling it a little bit. You go max neural drive off of that traditional way of training. So with that said, I can totally see, based upon his job, based upon how he trains, that it can be that lingering thing. And as much as he wanted to feel like he was going to be back, he was unable just because of those factors that I just mentioned.
Right. And you don't want to rush it. I mean, we even saw with Jair being
no, you don't. You do not want to rush it. No.
It gets into a whole different conversation. And again, it doesn't help anybody out, whether it's Ricard being back and not feeling himself and with the risk for re-injury, or the Ravens not getting what they fully need out of him on the field. It's best for everybody if you just take it slow and make sure he feels as good as he can. And that's what I was just saying with the Jair thing, where they clearly want him to feel like himself again. He didn't really get to practice throughout the course of training camp, and clearly probably shouldn't have been out there in week number 1 against the Bills. So I appreciate that approach from the Ravens, despite the fact that we know Jair's a competitor. He wants to be out there, but I'd rather him be out there after a couple weeks off and doing what Jair can do, as opposed to him maybe feeling like a little bit of a shell of himself out there on the field. But speaking of Isaiah, Q, and again, we don't know at this point whether he'll play or not on Monday night, but I want to kind of dive into the expectation conversation with you, because it feels like we are getting close, whether it's this week, next week, whenever it will be. We've talked about this, you and I, before, but I think a misconception around players returning from injury is that I feel like a lot of people think that they should just go back to 100%. Boom, they're who they were before right off the bat. There has been nothing that's happened. And if they don't look like themselves. It's like, what's wrong with this person? I think that's one of those misconceptions. And so for Likely himself coming off of that foot, you and I have talked about with his role, what that means for him in particular as that heals up. But we know the Ravens have Mark Andrews. They have Charlie Kolar. Obviously, from a stats perspective and from a game perspective, it hasn't been a super, eye-popping start for him from the stat sheet perspective. Bringing Likely back, I think everybody assumes he's going to be that tight end one. He's going to soar ahead, which certainly could be possible. But what are your expectations personally based off the recovery for that injury? And is the Ravens maybe just want to ease him back in? I'm sure that's a possibility as well.
Oh, they absolutely need to ease him back in. I think for him, he's recognizing that, yeah, I got talent. I need to be out there. I need to, help out my team, the whole nine. But he also needs to recognize the bigger picture. This is a contract year. There were some contracts that were signed by other tight ends that set the market. And right now, he's in a great position to get paid. However, leverage. And when you're injured in this type of injury, your leverage gets a little bit shaken. So you want to remove all doubt in anyone's mind. And the way to do that is by not rushing back thinking that, oh, it's fine. I'm going to be fine. Everything is fine. And technically you don't look like yourself. And so I think for him, that mindset of I'm going to go out there and play when I'm ready is paramount. Because again, this is the first part of the season. Like you truly make big boy money latter part of the year. When you're doing it and you're a good team and like you're establishing like wins and stacking wins and now it's playoff positioning and you get into the playoffs and teams are trying to game plan against you because you're that good, that's big boy money right there. This early portion of it all, okay, like that's great and all, but let's see it when you're healthy and we need you, which is latter parts of the year. That's what you're looking for to get paid.
Yeah, it's obviously important to have a great whole season, but how many guys, Q, have we seen burst onto the scene in the first month of the year, then fizzle out, and then that's what people see, and they're like, oh, okay, that first month didn't really mean anything. This is who they are. How many postseason performers who've just balled out in the postseason on a contract year, we've seen them get big deals for those performances late in the season. It's what have you done for me lately, league? And obviously what you do for a team at the end of the season obviously is what kind of sticks with teams as they look to evaluate their roster. But Q, I appreciate you. Thank you for hopping on as always. Before I get you out of here, tell people where they can find you and what you're working on.
Yeah, so missiletraining.com. Missiletraining.com is where you can find me, locate me, interact. We can have a great conversation on your sports performance and human movement training. When it comes to sports performance, doesn't matter if you're a team, doesn't matter if you're an individual, and it really doesn't matter the sport. I'm here to help you move better, to be durable, to be strong, and to increase your speed. At the same time, if you're a human mover, we all are, you're going to have those deficiencies that are going to cause you aches, pains, not be your fullest. Come to Missile Training and recognize how we can help you improve age ranges from all the way up. My oldest client's 85. He's been faithful to his health and his wellness plan. At the same time, my youngest, I've had kids as young as 6 years old. They've come in, they've been locked in, and they've done a phenomenal job. So, missiletraining.com. Of course, you can see me on Purple Pregame every Sunday. We break it all down for you on WJZ Channel 13 and right here, Locked On Ravens. Kevin Ostreicher and I, we just give you what you need, all your Raven content. And yes, we give you so much content that we have extra content we want to share with you, and we share it with you on the Squad Show. Sam Njoku, Kevin Ostreicher, Qadry Ismail, remember those names. The Ravens Squad Show, we make sure post-game, we're going to give you what our opinions are and what we saw in the game. And then during the week, we build up to the game. And this week, we're going to build up to the Lions, making sure you're ready. Sit back, get the popcorn out, click on the Monday Night Football game, or traverse your way down to M&T Bank Stadium and check out the game in live action. Doesn't matter. We got you covered.
You can catch us on the Squad Show tonight. Again, that is going to be at 7:30. We got you Wednesdays and Sundays. All the links to Q's work in the description down below. So be sure to check that out at Missile Trading, missiletraining.com, in the whole 9 yards. Q does amazing work. And again, you can check us out on Locked On Ravens every Monday through Friday. We got all the bonus content and episodes you need as well. Instant reactions, watch alongs, the whole 9 yards. Be sure to hit the like and subscribe button in video form. Follow along in audio form, and I will see you right back here soon on Locked On Ravens.